Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Talk Openly. I can't believe it's Tuesday again. It's somewhat shocking. I feel like what is going on with time and samsara for me these days?
It's
it's really
Groundhog's Day.
wild. It's groundhog. Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah. Just keep waking up, and here we are again. Here we are again. Oh my gosh, that's a good movie.
It is. I have a friend of mine who says it's the ultimate sort of movie, Buddhist movie.
Yeah. What a trip. I feel like I want to watch that again.
Such a good movie.
It gets pretty dark too, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm gonna try and find every way to end it.
Exactly. And the movie was just a shortened version of it. Apparently, my understanding is that in the original screenplay or whatever, that it extends and it gets way darker. It gets way longer,
Wow.
right?
Huh.
So, yeah.
Interesting. Well,
happy Groundhog Tuesday to you.
Happy Groundhog Tuesday, yes. As we cycle around in samsara. But you know what? I'm really glad that while I am here and working on, developing the skills and qualities of enlightened activity, that I can do it with you.
Hey. The feeling is mutual. The feeling is very mutual, Jack. Thank you.
Yeah. And if I didn't say it already, I'm Jack, and I'm really glad that I'm here with Daniel, and I'm glad that all you listeners are here as well. So welcome.
Yep.
Yeah, tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about peer pressure, which is very pertinent to my life right now. So I'm excited to have this conversation. I think you're gonna help me out, Daniel.
Good. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that it's related to your life right now. And that's something like I like the focus on you rather than me. Yeah, I can't wait to hear it. Maybe we'll get some juicy gossip or something, huh?
Well, that's the thing, is that I have a hard time not engaging in juicy gossip. And so that's going to be something that I'm able to, just work out a little bit with you. So
Good.
Looking forward to it.
Oh, yeah. Excellent.
Yeah. Well, before we get in, sorry. Yeah.
I thought I'd kind of flip the script a little bit and just check in on you. How are you doing, Jack? What's going on with your practice? How's your life?
So my life right now is I feel tense. I'm like a tense I don't know, it's kind of fireball, which has its strengths, right? Like there's good things about I don't know. There's good things about being an intense fireball, but I think actually it's just kind of stressful. But I don't know. This is part of my this is part of my world. This is part of my this birth, like this life that I'm in right now, is that I do experience a lot of intensity, both like physically and mentally. And there's ways that I can really use that in my training, right? Like if I'm, doing meditation, if I can channel that towards like some focus, that can be really awesome. But the flip side of it is that I have so much intensity that I'm also incredibly distracted. And then also like, there's that little adage, not too tight, not too loose, within meditation, where it's like, okay, you got to know your middle. And that's where you want to try and find, is like a middle ground where you're not too tightly, overly trying to focus, but you're also not lax, you're not like drifting off into sleep or whatnot. And I find that I'm super on the tense side most of the time. And so, I think part of finding my middle is learning how to relax. Like I'm coming to realize as, an adult, that it's really hard for me to relax. So this is kind of, it's interesting how the Dharma has opened me up to very kind of simple understandings of where I'm at and who I am right now. It's like, oh, just this way of being that I thought was just inherently me, um, is not actually, like, it's not permanent. It's not something that needs to be that way. It's not like my personality. It's and also personalities change too, right? But that's just been so interesting that the Dharma has been able to illuminate, like, and hold a mirror up to, oh, I'm a little bit of an intense, like, ball of anxiety.
Yeah. What's when you're all right? So when you're meditating, so in practice, what's the antidote to that intensity, that intense distraction?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it depends, and it doesn't always work. But I do have to focus so much on, so since I'm so much on the intensity side, I really have to bring it, the swing it the other way and try, okay, so now I'm just going to really focus on relaxing. So I might even take a few moments away from my object of focus and just say, okay, we're going to do like 3 really slow breaths, and that's it.
Yeah.
And so I really have to just kind of like tamp it down. And one thing that I love in calming the mind, which is like kind of the manual for shamatha that our teacher Lama Jempa has recommended. Uh, he talks about, Ginlam Rinpa talks about how a lot of times we have to do things that depress the mind. And not necessarily, doesn't mean depress as in like sadden the mind
Mhm.
necessarily,
Yeah.
but like to just bring it down. And so one visualization that he recommends that I find interesting, that I can also get wrapped up in it, so I have to be careful, but you kind of imagine almost your mind going down like your body. So your mind is getting, going down into like your sacrum almost in the earth. And so it's kind of like your center is more at the bottom of your body rather than up here, because I think, that's where the excitedness happens, is
Yeah.
up here. And so bringing that mind down. And yeah, there's something about that's I think very humbling too, because it's like, it's almost like my mind is in like my butt. Like that's almost
Yeah,
the
exactly.
visual. So it's just bringing it down, humbling myself,
That's
right?
right. Oh, I like it. I
And
like
all the things I'm thinking about are just silly, unimportant. So I like that one. That one's helpful. And then kind of a more cognitive one too, is thinking about the suffering of others, and myself, and this suffering that we all share within samsara, and that, this practice is really, this is the path that I've chosen to help alleviate that suffering. And so, okay, let's do it. um I find that the visualization one and the breathing ones tend to help me more, since I'm such a cognitively focused person. I think I need to do more body-based stuff to counteract it. So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, wow, that you're doing the work.
Trying to. Yeah,
Yeah,
trying to.
I love it. I love it. I think it's fantastic. I enjoy already and look forward to seeing the complete transformation of your intense fireball. Like I think it was the very first impression of you that I ever received was that of this intensity. I remember it clearly, and I love that, like there's this transformation happening, right? It's always going to be a part of who you are, right? Hopefully. Um, uh, so how does it help you, like move you along in
Right.
this direction that you want to go?
We want those things to become skillful.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right. Exactly.
rather than the chaos that it can often be.
Yeah.
But yeah, enlightened qualities, are kind of like transformed qualities. So, this kind of intensity or anxiety can also be transformed into really skillful action. So,
Spiritual alchemy.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah. Led to gold, right?
Right, right. Well, Daniel, tell me about your week. What's going on in your samsara?
Within my samsara, lots of ups and downs. No,
Yeah.
not really. It's pretty even keel for the most part. But you know what I think is so fascinating is so you're talking about this intensity, right, in your own practice. And one of the things I so enjoy about our friendship is there's sometimes appears to be a polarization,
Mm,
right, like between us, like and it's fascinating to me how polarity is really just a spectrum of one thing, right? In this, and so in the same way that you're talking about your intensity, within my own practice, what I've been noticing is more lethargy, more
mhm.
of this, the exact opposite, everything that you said, flip it, the exact
Yeah.
opposite of that, right? So I've been thinking lately, I've been having a heck, I used to be like the early bird, get up early, fiery first thing in the morning. And, and when I started having a regular practice, man, I was all fired. I'm like, I'm going to sit, I'm going to do this. I'm going to meditate for an hour. And, there was like lots of energy and not a lot of like dullness in that sense. But what I've noticed lately, like, and I'm just talking about recently, maybe the last month or two, is this increase in sort of like what feels like sleepiness, right? And what I find interesting about it is that I don't think it's sleepiness. I don't think it's
Yeah.
because it's not lack of rest, right? It's like a ignorance type of thing.
Mhm.
So, I used to use like drugs and alcohol to sort of like quell all of that kind of to practice avoidance and to ignore reality, so to speak. And with those things gone, it's interesting that even that somehow subconsciously, possibly, like I'm still wanting to sort of like not really take too hard of a look at it. So I have like increased sort of just sleepiness. Like I want to just like stay in bed longer,
Mhm.
which is weird for me. It's like it's a new thing. And then when I do get into my meditation practice and I'm sitting there, I notice this, and this has always been with me, right? Just similar, like I've always noticed this quality towards sort of like lethargy, sleepy dreaminess. Like there's a dreamlike quality to my distractions in meditation, and I've had to, like I've been noticing it. I'm like, oh, that's my ignorance showing up, right?
Yeah.
Like that's my like avoidance, whatever that is, and so it trying to counterbalance it, trying to apply antidotes to that, has been helpful. And it's interesting because I actually there's a cognitive portion of that and a physical portion of it. Physically speaking, what I notice is that paying really strict attention to my posture. Like so
Mm.
when I so like before I really started becoming aware like that this was what was going on, I thought my posture was fine, but what I do now is if I like when I come back from my distraction, right? I've been off, my mind's been wandering, I'm coming back, and when I come back, I intentionally sort of adjust my posture to be much more straight, not leaning too far back, not leaning too far forward, any of that. And then I just, like settle back into it. So there's a physical component to it related to posture. And then actually quite similar to you, the other antidote is this like remembering like what am I doing here and for what
Mm.
for what purpose am I doing this, right? Because did I come here to sleep? Did I come here to dream, right?
Right.
And or did I come here to be to be concentrated? Did I come here to gain some clarity, to wake up,
Yeah.
Is that why I'm here, right? And why do I want to wake up? What's the point of that, right? So like doing a little bit of that cognitive application is helpful as well. And I am seeing, I'm seeing some fruit there where I'm like, oh, right, okay, I'm gonna stick around just a little bit longer and don't go back into that dreamscape quite
Yeah.
as. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes we have to be a little bit I guess, yeah, a little bit firm with ourselves, of course, compassionately, right? Because, we have so much practice in being, harmfully firm with ourselves, or at least I do. I know that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, but I know that it's like, there's almost this feeling of like, I'm like a kindergarten teacher or something. And I'm like, okay, come on back,
Yep.
sweetheart. Like we're gonna sit down here. And so there does have to be this element within my mind that is watching the meditation and kind of guiding me back.
Yeah.
Which I guess maybe that's vigilance. I think that's maybe
This
the
is that.
term.
I think you're right. Yeah,
Yeah.
vigilant. Yeah.
I have to tell you something that happened recently in my meditation that was so funny when I when I applied um a cognitive antidote. So similar to you, I sometimes I'll ask myself like what is important right now? What's important here? Maybe like a week ago, I was having one of those meditations where I was really chatty in my head, just going on and on and on and on about all the things, that I have to do, blah, blah, blah. And so I just, came to myself and I was like, what's important here? And it was like almost, it was like immediate. It almost felt like really like a kindergartner who like shoots their hand up, like on the carpet, and then they give like, the wildest wrong answer, right? And so when I asked myself this, what's important, that voice said, to get ahead. Like it was like immediate. It was like to get ahead. Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
And that it was just so
Oh my
clear
God.
that that's like how I've been engaging my life, like really this last year that I've been in school and like work and also maintaining um my training and whatnot, is that so often things just feel like I'm trying to get ahead to the next thing so that I can check it off my list. And I don't know, get where, like what am I trying to do,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
there's always going to be the checklist, so what
You're
am
on.
I getting ahead
That's
to?
right. You're on a samsaric treadmill.
I am,
Or
yeah.
the hamster wheel is actually, I think, a better one.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
It was
Actually,
hilarious.
that's so funny. That's so funny. That's my. I just talked to my neighbor this morning. We had a brief conversation about it, where it was like this same sort of. What do we? Like he was talking about doing installing. He does like woodworking and cabinetry and stuff, and he was talking about installing it. And he said, he goes, I always get so excited, right? When I'm about to install it, which means it's going to be done. He goes, but then I know there's going to be problems every time. Like I kid myself. And he goes, I know there's going to be problems every single time. And then I'm going to have to come back and adjust and adjust and adjust and do these things until it's just right. And then I was like, yeah. And then what? You're just going to have another project, right? You're just going to
Yeah,
do it. It's not going to end. You're just going to go to the next thing, right?
right.
What's the rush? What's the hurry?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's such a great point, like to remind myself, is that like what is the rush here?
Right.
And when I do rush, what am I what am I glossing over? What I'm glossing over is this, incredible reality that it's possible for me to engage in all the time, and yet I'm just thinking myself away from it, you know? It's shocking sometimes. And it
And
should be. It should
yeah,
be. Yeah.
yeah.
Shocking when we realize that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, instead, what appears to be shocking is when we are able to become as fully present as we're capable of in the moment.
Right.
That's what's shocking.
Right.
Right? Like actually, like the norm, the fact that we're ignoring all of this all the time doesn't shock us, right? Because
Right.
that's our norm. And then when we finally, get some natural, normal, actual what's here, present now, like it's like, whoa, whoa, here.
Right.
There's so much, so much beauty and wonder and all this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've never been separate from it.
No, no.
Yeah,
Wow.
and that's what you know, all of this action and activity and all the things is about, is about me. Me. Like I'm getting ahead.
Getting ahead. I love that. I love
Yeah.
your little kindergartner throwing hand out there,
I'm glad that there's something in my mind that lets me, tell the truth sometimes to myself. Because I've had that before where another time it was like to be in control.
Yes, yes. Well, and then there's this other part of you that seems to be capable of laughing at it too.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
that's good.
I used to not laugh at it. I used to shun it, right? But now I'm so glad that they're willing to like,
Yeah.
yeah, come out and show me just what's happening, right? Because then I can start to work with it.
Yeah.
And it is funny. It really is. It's like, oh, you've been tinkering around in there like that all along, and and no wonder you're tired.
Yeah, exactly. I like these little moments of like sort of catching the self, right? Where
Yeah.
like it's so sort of like it can be so like joyful, kind of fun, right? Like even with, like initially sometimes it feels like anger or disappointment or
Or
something.
shock, yeah.
Yeah, something like that, right? It can be one of these emotions that oftentimes don't like necessarily feel all that good. And then when we sort of back up a little bit and just see it and see ourselves in it, and then we're like, oh my God, there you are again, you little cutie pie. You can like
Yeah,
pinch your own cheek.
yeah. Yeah, we can be good stewards of all those little parts of ourselves,
That's right.
and yeah, not shun them, right? Because uh yeah, that only makes things harder if we're just kind of
That's how they grow up to be little demons.
yeah, totally. Oh, Daniel, well let's do a little lojong. What do you think? Should we
Heck
try
yeah.
and train our minds?
Let's train our minds with a random Lojong slogan. Let me share my screen.
And this is on the Lions Roar Dharma Center website. We've got a great random Lojong slogan generator, which is very hard for me to say. Random Lojong slogan generator.
You mean
But
the RLSG, right?
the
So,
RLSG, the rules good. Let's
yeah.
check it out.
All
Let's
right, here
let's
we go. Here we go. Set your intention and go.
Oh, this is good.
Oh, you got to get ahead though. How are you going to get ahead?
So for those who are just listening, we've got slogan number 35. Don't aim to win. All right, this is so important for all of us. But let's see what Choyam Trungpa has to say. When practitioners begin to develop their understanding of the Dharma and their appreciation of the Dharma, they sometimes fall into a sort of racehorse approach. They become involved with who is the fastest, who can understand the highest meaning of Mahamudra or the greatest meaning of Tantra, or the highest idea of ultimate bodhicitta, or who has understood any of the hidden teachings. Such practitioners are concerned with who can do their prostrations faster, who can sit better, who can eat better, who can do this and that better. They are always trying to race with other people. But if our practice is regarded purely as a race, we have a problem.
Oh my God, this is hilarious. I think sometimes I get the feeling that Dirk, who created this thing, is maybe behind the scenes tweaking it. you know, like he's back, he's like, oh, I know which one to share with him. It's just no, I'm kidding. He's not, but isn't that amazing? It's so tied together, right? Like with what
Yeah.
you were talking about in the beginning, it ties into the concept of peer pressure, certainly within the Sangha, and it's good, darn good advice. And you and I have talked about this at length, right? About our own experiences with wanting to win, right?
Mm-hmm.
To
Mm-hmm.
get the spiritual material prize, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I appreciate what he says here about, when we are comparing, because I do compare myself to other Sangha members sometimes, where I'm like, gosh, I've been training for like 4 years now, and I see this person doing this practice, or they seem really chill, and like I'm not chill. And so I just end up comparing, and that's just the comparison, of course, is like such a drain, not just in Dharma training, right, but anywhere else in our lives. It's just, yeah, it just takes away from everything good that we are working on right now, that we do have, the good qualities that I'm working on. So this, I really just so deeply appreciate this. Yeah, don't compare ourselves with each other.
And what
Uphold,
even
like we're all winning in our own special ways, right? We're training. This is brilliant.
totally, right? And it's like it's funny because if it is a race, if the race is like it's a journey of sorts, and each one of us is on our own race, who are we racing against? Ourselves, right? Like they like each person is on their own track, so to speak, right?
Yeah,
And so yeah, it's nonsense, the whole idea of trying to compare ourselves to others. It won't stop us from trying, though.
definitely. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, like I'm not so sure. I'm not like I know that I've had this tendency, certainly in the past, and I'm sure it's still there in some sense. But I don't really have too much of like I do sometimes wonder what other people's experiences are like, like people who have been doing this a very long time. Because it's kind of a funny thing where that you can't really gauge oftentimes what's going on the inside of the person by their exterior demeanor, right?
It's
Like,
true. Yeah.
and sometimes it surprises me, like somebody will be quite quiet or whatever, and I don't really know them, and then they'll just say something and I'll be like, oh my god, like that's this very clear, deep understanding, and they just sort of like it just came out. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that's it, man. Great advice. Don't aim to win. We've never done this one before.
Hey, we haven't. Yeah. Yeah. And when I heard Lama say recently that, like, you know, when we're trying to track our progress, um, it's hard to know sometimes what our progress even looks like, because we don't really have anything to compare it to. The rest of our life, what have we been comparing ourselves to is but worldly, like, things like these drives for money or fame, or
Yeah.
a good job. Like, those are the things that we end up comparing ourselves to say, like, if we've done a good job yet. But with Dharma training, there's like not the same kind of like we're not gaining in that way. And so it's kind of like, what did he say? He said it's like seeing a jet go across the sky. Is that, from our perspective, it actually looks like it's moving kind of slow, right? Because it's just kind of inching across the sky. But of course, what's happening is it's, sometimes going at like 600 miles an hour.
Right,
So
right. Yeah.
um so that's, I thought that was a really helpful image, that like we are doing this, and it's not possible to compare it to anything else.
Wouldn't that be funny to try to race a jet?
Yeah, I can do it.
Yeah, look how
I
slow
will do it.
it's going, so slow. Let's go. I can run faster than that.
I like it. You're not gonna win, I'm sorry.
No.
Oh, beautiful picture here too.
A little picture of Tsongkhapa.
Nice.
Nice. All
Yeah,
right.
definitely check this out on the Lions Roar website, because there's just in addition to the slogan, they have a passage each time, and then a beautiful Dharma image. So there's a lot there.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah.
Wow. So shall we switch gears? I think
Let's
we
switch
should.
gears.
Jack, if you don't think we should switch gears, then something bad's gonna happen.
Well, I was just thinking too, like, oh, I was just peer pressuring people to check out the Lions Roar website.
Well, I think that's the kind of funny thing about it is that, like, because of our interconnected nature, we are inevitably going to be pressuring each other, influencing each other,
That's a
one
good
way,
word. Yeah.
one way or another, right? Like we can't help but be influenced. And so it's sort of a question of whether it's like positive peer pressure or negative peer pressure. And I would say that encouraging people to go to the Lions Roar website and check out the RLSG is probably on the side of positive peer pressure, or
I would say so
maybe
too.
another way to look at it too, since karma is this sort of cause and effect sort of situation, maybe it's generating good karma.
There you go. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
Positive peer pressure,
positive peer
positive
pressure.
influence.
We don't think
And
about we usually talk about the negative aspects of peer pressure.
yes, and there's plenty to be had there, right? And I noticed that for myself, as I've been coming into my Dharma practice over the last almost 5 years. Like I started coming to the temple in the fall of 2018, so that's almost 5 years.
Yeah.
And I noticed that there's this real tug of war that happens sometimes with me in my growing Dharma values, um, with also having, friends and relationships with people who aren't practicing the Dharma actively, which is fine. Like that's what's going to happen, right? But there's just ways that I feel myself getting kind of tugged towards like engaging in behaviors that I'm like, I don't know if I feel good about that. Like that doesn't feel great. And the one that's particularly difficult for me is gossip.
That's what you
And
meant at the outside.
yeah, and particularly gossip as related to like workplace organizing that I'm involved in. Um, so I'm just gonna jump in, and I'll share a little bit about what's been happening at my job. So uh, I'm a peer counselor, and I work at a hospital that's it's like a vast system. It's run by the UW, and so I'm part of this like peer counseling team that's all dispersed throughout the hospital. We don't really get together much. We don't know much about each other. But in the last year, we've kind of started organizing around different needs that we have, and pay equity and whatnot, which is really great, right? Like those are good things. I think it's really important to advocate for oneself. On the flip side, I noticed that in any type of organizing, it's almost like there has to be an enemy. And what oftentimes happens is that enemy then gets placed on particular people. And so of course there are people who kind of run these systems and make decisions and get to decide how much we get paid and stuff like that. But in what I've been starting to learn through the Dharma is that those people are not my enemies. And they're in fact fellow human beings who have their own needs and feelings and suffering. And so oftentimes, in these conversations, with folks that I'm organizing with is that it kind of starts to veer into that, like, okay, how can, like, they just want to attack something. We just want to, like, I want to talk about this person, right? And how they're messing up or whatever. And sometimes I get pulled into it. Like, I feel that it's almost like this like rush of camaraderie, right? Like, oh yeah, they are messed up and they are effing up in this way. And I don't like how that feels, like I just feel kind of like, oh, it's like it's pants. Here's how I think of it. It's like I'm wearing pants that are way too tight for me now or something, where it's just like, oh, I can button it, I can make it work, but it's really uncomfortable. Um, so that's kind of the big struggle that I have with peer pressure and wanting to maintain and grow in my knowledge of the Dharma and how to think of and treat people. So it's been a struggle, and I'm curious, what you think. What do you hear? Help me out.
Oh my gosh. Well, I can't help but think that it's a natural sort of extension of in-group, out-group dynamics, right? So this kind of peer pressure dynamic is always going to be in every group situation. And there's the in-group, right, which you're a part of here, the organizers, and the out-group, the management, whoever they happen to be, who stand in
Yep.
opposition, right? And so like I think that like just seeing that it seems to me like somehow just like recognizing like, right, okay, I get it, I'm part of this group and they're not in this group, and that's why there's this peer pressure going on. I mean, if you think about it, within the group that you're a part of, what's going on is people, yourself and others, wanting to get ahead, so to speak, to get what they want, and what they want is the same as what everybody else wants. So it's sort of amplified. They want this control, this power. They want to be validated, right? They don't want to be excluded from the group. They want to be a part of the group that gets the rewards when they succeed and all of that, right? And so, all of that kind of stuff, it seems sort of like just like normal, right? Like that, yeah, okay,
Right.
great. And I don't think it's necessarily negative, except when it comes into what you were talking about, when the pants you're putting on are just, they don't fit anymore, right? Like that then I think it's kind of interesting is that you'd have to almost risk, in a way, alienation from the group or condemnation by the group if you were to sort of express yourself, truly, like where if you were more in line with your sort of understanding of the Dharma, right? Where like, hey, I know that we're attacking the management right now, and that feels really good, but actually, it would be more helpful to our cause if we could try to consider them our ally. How can we turn them into an ally? How can we
Yeah.
transform them from an enemy into a friend? What would that look like? If you started that kind of language, it could actually be sort of personally threatening, right? Like,
Yeah.
people might be like, "Whoa, Jac's not the leader we thought they were," right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like at least, yeah, I can imagine something like that kind of coming up. And yet, you can just kind of see, even with that, just that little brief thing, that how actually that would be a path forward, a real powerful path forward. Because
Yeah.
of course you want these people as your allies, right? Wouldn't that be better?
Yeah.
Rather than viewing them as being in opposition, because I doubt actually that deep down inside that the people themselves are in opposition.
Right.
Sometimes the roles are in opposition to your,
Right.
right? But they
Right.
might still very much care about some of the people in the group and want what's best for them.
Totally. Yeah, no, I think that is an excellent point and kind of exactly what the kind of conclusions that I'm coming towards. And I think that actually there's this real thirst that people have to recognize the connections that we have with people who we think are our enemies.
Yeah.
Because when I have, brought more of that kind of approach in, where it's less about that kind of antagonistic, self other, us them thing. There is this like kind of excitedness, like, oh, that could really work,
Yeah.
and
It's
there's
breaking outside of the bounds of ordinary conceptual thinking, right? Like the ordinary sort of simple way that people would like kind of naturally gravitate towards. That way of thinking kind of breaks those boundaries down, and there's recognition of its power.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think, what you said about that sometimes the roles might be kind of inherently opposing or whatever, but the people within those roles are probably not. I think it's just really, really good wisdom, and being able to acknowledge the humanity of people who are within roles, like, I feel like that's the only way forward, where we can
Yeah.
break out of those roles. So yeah, I love it.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't. I think there are plenty of examples when groups that are sort of at odds, like this, fail to meet their objectives because they give in to the sort of let's say they give in to negative peer pressure. Let's just
Yeah.
say, because it's actually simpler and it's more along the lines of what we humans just have been used to doing. But I think it ties in, I think all of this ties in with what we were talking about last week about sharing the Dharma, right?
Mm,
Is that there's this, like, so on the one hand, what we're talking about is wanting to resist negative influence or negative peer pressure. We don't want somebody forcing us into those tight pants, right? And then on the other hand, how do we exert positive influence, or how do we have positive peer pressure? And like what we were talking about last week, the number one way that we can share the Dharma, and by sharing the Dharma, that's positive peer pressure, at least that's my interpretation of it, is to really be, to embody the qualities, right? So,
yeah,
things like, really, and, this is all already part of the path and already something that we're practicing, which is things like right action and right speech, right? Like
right,
thinking about it, not, like while you're there, like, oh man, like, okay, like what would be the right thing to do here, right? Like what the right next action, or is my speech actually constructive? Is it helpful? Is it building up, or is it tearing down? That type of thing, right?
right.
And I can imagine even to the extent that like calling, like recognizing, like mindfully pointing out, like, hey, you know what, we have unfortunately mixed the people together with their roles. Can we take a moment? Actually, we were talking crap about Sandra in HR or whatever, right? I don't know, making that up, right? Oh, what a negative, lousy. She's always this, or whatever. Yeah, I can only imagine the way the conversation might go.
Yeah,
Like, hey, let's take a moment and just recognize that our beef isn't with that person or their whatever their personal, characteristics. Our beef is with the fact that role is not giving us the raise that we deserve, right?
yeah, yeah,
That actually that person, like you said, they're human like us, right? And they also, like, what are their motivations? Their motivations are similar to ours. They want to have a good job. They want to be recognized by their bosses. They don't want to get fired. They, how
right,
can we help them with that? How can we help them
right.
meet their goals? And then, like, by strengthening them, help them to see our value and, take the right action towards us. So, like, I think like in that sort of way, right, by really embodying the Dharma, right, having that compassionate, loving kindness towards all of the people, including with the people in the group who are doing the crap talking, right?
Yeah. It seems like maybe an opposite of peer pressure is kind of collaboration, because
Yes,
with peer
yes.
pressure, it's so much like you were saying about that in group, where it's like I feel like a lot of times, and I'm thinking back when I was a kid too, that it's like you're almost just like you're acting in a way so as not to be punished by the group, right? So
That's
we're
right.
kind of like shaping our personalities and our
Yep.
actions to make sure that we fit with that group. And so it becomes this really insular and like cut off thing. Whereas, you know, the opposite of that is to open up and to to risk that, you know, opening towards others that
Ah,
would
I
then
love
kind
it.
of cut off, you know, or yeah, mess with
That's
the
right.
inness of the group. Yeah.
That's right. You know, I think it's gorgeous. Yeah, did you happen to catch Autumn's talk on Sunday?
No, I have to, I'm gonna watch it recorded. I had to work on Sunday.
Okay, okay, no, but oh my gosh, because what you just said was the highlight of the talk for me. So
Sweet.
this is, yeah, it's fascinating. So Autumn Payne was talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, right?
Yeah.
Which was, you know, I think that it was I think it might have gotten kind of a charged emotional feelings in some, you know, some of the audience because it's a pretty, you know, pretty powerful subject matter,
Yeah.
and we're being hmm, called to really reflect on it.
Challenged in a
uh,
way. Yeah.
Challenge, that's right, that's right, that's a good way to put it. And I thought it was really beautiful. There was one Sangha member who during the like the questions and answers portion of it brought up a situation with their family where a family member was being incredibly racist to some of their neighbors while giving other neighbors a pass because of their race, and it was obviously like it was quite traumatic for the Sangha member. They were like at, you know, like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do about this. This is
Yeah.
terrible. And they're like building fences and they're, you know, they're doing all kinds of stuff. They're like in group, out group dynamics, right? They were pushing out these and it was all racially motivated and it was all this kind of like really negative attention against the people. Anyway, and then what I thought was really beautiful is just a little bit later, um, another Sangha member, you know, just threw out this thought, which was very similar to what you said, which was, well, you know, what if the solution, because nobody could come up with a solution for this problem of this racist family member with their neighbors, and this other member said, well, what about collaboration, like, you know, like
Mm.
collaborating on a block party maybe, something like that, like let's have some fun together, like that's
Yeah.
okay, everybody likes a good time, right? And then once you get together, then those boundaries start to break, we see each other as people rather than as races or as roles or whatever, right? So I think it's beautiful because I think that you're right. I think that's the answer, is how, like, we're not in this group and out of this group. It's not dualistic in that sense, right?
Yeah.
We're all interconnected. How are we going to like manifest that interconnected, you know, interconnectedness in a way that is beneficial to all the parties, and that
Right.
requires cooperation. Yes.
Right. Right. And it takes some real vulnerability and risk, right? Because you know, I'm positive that working on getting that block party together would probably feel like a big risk, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
who knows, like, are people not going to get along? Is there going to be all this tension? Like, are like, how is this going to work, you know? But to say like, okay, we're gonna be vulnerable here, and it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to risk making mistakes. That is just so, yeah, it's beautiful, because I feel like so much of peer pressure, right, is about like that you can't make mistakes, that you have to be part of the group, and you
Mhm.
can't go outside of what the group wants, you know, or how the
Right.
group behaves. But actually, I think, you know, as I mentioned earlier, I think there's this real thirst for moving beyond
Yeah.
that kind of just nasty inclusiveness, and rather expanding to you know, a real vulnerable inclusiveness that involves
That's right.
all of us. um uh,
I
I want to
love
get
I
there.
love it. No, it's fantastic because, you know, convincing the group to do this, yes, that would require vulnerability on the person, assuming it might be you, who's promoting this crazy idea, right? That's something that other people hadn't really thought about. It's interesting because it still meets the group's needs. It
Yeah.
actually is, it's, hey, let's clarify our objectives. These are our objectives. How are we going to get there? Well, alienating the other side has not proven to be successful unless you
Right.
have immense power, right?
Right.
Immense power.
Right.
And usually there's a disparity, right, between those making these decisions and the ones
Hmm.
influenced by it. So typically the
Right.
power is not to the advantage of the group. at the
Yeah, exactly.
time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so there needs to be collaboration. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fascinating. And one thing that I've really been reflecting on too is like when I feel that pressure to conform, usually always actually when I take a look at it, what am I what am I really trying to get from that situation? And when I break it down, what's happening is that it's just the eight worldly concerns.
All it is.
And the two pairs from the eight worldly concerns that really show up there are, wanting a good reputation and wanting to avoid a bad reputation, and the other one is wanting praise and not wanting blame or disrepute. So um and to recognize that is what my goal is, to connect with people in that way so that I'm avoiding blame.
Yeah.
It's just like it really blows my mind. And something that really helps me is thinking about my teachers, because I think about, there's even times in teachings where Lama has said something that is maybe an unpopular view or maybe something that puts him out on a limb, but it's for him it's the right thing to say. And I think about too, like um just not being afraid, right? Like moving beyond that fear of impressing people, I think will be so liberatory, right? And to move towards, what are my values?
Right.
What I value is honesty, and what I value so deeply is the knowledge that is currently still just an intellectual knowledge. It sometimes moves down into the heart, but I'm working on that being fully part of my being. Is that I know that every single being, every single person, every single sentient being has the grand immaculate capacity for Buddhahood, and that we are all wanting to be free of suffering, that we just want happiness and connection and freedom.
Right.
These
Right.
things these are the inherent, these are our natures. And so if I really come at it from, okay, if I truly believe that, then I have nothing to fear by saying, I
No.
think about this differently.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then, the truth or the power of, your values will shine through, right? It'll actually accomplish your goals.
Yeah.
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 I couldn't help but think too, you identified the two pairs of the eight worldly concerns that impact you, or that you seem to be gravitating towards. But I couldn't help but think that actually that within your group, for example, it's quite likely that the others are motivated not only by those, but also by the other pairs, right? So the whole, in one case, for example, the purpose of the group is directly related to gain and loss,
Hmm.
right? Like, for example, wanting more money. And then there is great sort of like pleasure, even if it is sort of distorted pleasure in in talk, in having some type of control or powerful, I don't know if it's abuse of another person or talking about another person or whatever, right? There's some
Yeah,
kind.
there's an element of like the Schadenfreude, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Where it's like, ooh, haha, we can make fun of them. They're feeling
Exactly. They're
pain.
beneath
Yeah,
us,
like
right?
they're deserving of a little bit of pain.
It's the kind of thing that happens in war, right? It's dehumanizing. It's
Yeah,
it's it's literally making it easier for us to do the dirty deeds of attacking them,
right.
right?
Yeah,
And what
yeah,
you're wanting to express, and what deep down is like, no, actually, no, they're just like us, you know.
yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, I think it's so cool because, your this discussion, and what you seem motivated to do is indeed to exert that positive peer pressure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think with that, we can achieve lots of things, and including, more equitable workplaces, but
Hmm.
also workplaces that are more enjoyable to be in. If there's not all this tension
That's right.
between, staff and
Yeah.
managers and
Oh.
admin and whatnot, it's an easier place to be. And we can have, a living wage. Gosh, that would be great.
Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? My personal politics or political opinion in all of this is that we shouldn't have to use the word living wage.
Oh
That
gosh, I know.
it should be called wage, and it should be sufficient to live
Yeah,
on, right?
totally. Yeah. Um, I agree.
Yeah.
And
Unfortunately, yeah.
damn all the managers who keep us in our place. Just kidding.
That's funny. That's funny. Well, at least it's interesting. We were talking about how it's all sort of cyclical, right? Tuesday to Tuesday, day to day, whatever, just sort of on repeat, right? And I couldn't help. I did actually have a little discussion ahead of time with my daughter and her good friend, both of them 14 in middle
Mhm.
school, where peer pressure is, rampant.
Yeah,
And I couldn't help but to think, like, well, I was just, while we were talking, like, it's the same. Like, the objects are different, right? But the dynamics are the same. Those
yeah.
relationships are the exact same thing again and again and again.
We're all just trying to belong,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
sometimes our ways of doing that can be very harmful. Um,
exactly, right. Or as Autumn said, we all want equity, inclusion, and belonging.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, these are the aims. I really do believe that that Buddhism as a way of life, that those are the things that we're trying to create in our world. It is, equity and belonging. Um, and I think we have that ability within this life to do
Right,
that.
because without those, there is suffering, and our job is to eliminate suffering, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So go out there, fight the good fight. You got this, Jack. I believe in you.
Thanks, Daniel. I really appreciate it. It's been nice, because these things are um they're just very common pressures, and yeah, I know that there's another way, and a way that feels just much more aligned with where I want to be.
I'm so excited. I can't. Okay, so this is all happening right now, right? That's
Yes.
what makes it kind
Mm-hmm.
of fun to talk about. So that means that within a month or so, maybe 2 months, something like that, we might get a progress report or some feedback about like how you set a good example, and you encouraged and supported everybody, and you know demonstrated
It's
mutual respect, open communication, all that stuff,
all
right?
the
And how you
things.
succeeded in your goals as a result.
I want an A+. That'll be my progress report.
Yeah. You got it. You got this.
And yeah, and one thing I want to add is that, we're not perfect. And so, yes, these things we're going to be coming up against these problems all the time. And so it's like, when we make little slip ups, it's like, that's okay. It's okay. So I think that's something I have to remind myself, because when I hear progress report, the Jack that needs perfection and an
Right.
A+ is like really, really intense. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's okay. You know what? We're totally cool with C students here. It's
These get
fine.
degrees, Daniel.
That's right. C's get degrees. It's true. It's true. And also in a very real sense, one thing I've noticed is that when we're mindful of our slip ups, when we're aware of it, and they can actually become advantageous, right? So like,
Definitely.
like all of a sudden, like let's say whatever, bad mouthing somebody, right? And then we recognize, oh crap, I shouldn't have done that. And then we think, oh man, I'm gonna try to make this right. And then we go and talk to that person, right? And maybe apologize or something to that effect. And then it opens up doors, and then something blossoms and comes out of it, right? So even the
Yeah,
slip ups can be transformed into something that's positive.
absolutely. Transform all mishaps into the path, right?
I love it. That's it.
That's it. All
Yeah.
right. Well, everybody, thanks so much for being here, for listening. It's been a real pleasure, Daniel. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Jack, for bringing your life to the Dharma.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you for listening. I need this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all do.
All right, my friend. Well, I will see you in a week. It's gonna fly by.
Yep. Toodaloo. See you next Tuesday.
All right. Take care.
Bye.